This video is sponsored by the Youth Boost Initiative. More on that later. Many young people are questioning their ability to not only find a job, but to stay employed. And while some are talking about issues with the application process itself, others are mentioning the thousands of scam job listings that you find on places like Indeed and LinkedIn and wherever else. But when we actually look at the state of unemployment as a whole, what does the data actually tell us? In one of my previous videos, I mentioned the Youth March and how one of the goals was to address the lack of youth representation in politics. But what I didn't mention was a whole nother facet, was to address the high rates of youth unemployment. And as expected, the government urged everybody and their mother that they already have long-term strategies and programs in place, like the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention. You ever heard of that? Me neither. At the time of the protest, it was Q3, and the youth unemployment rate was sitting at 43.7%. And you know what happened a quarter later in Q4? It increased by 0.1%, which clearly means that the government doesn't actually care. According to the quarterly labor force survey for Q4, 84,000 more young people who were originally unemployed in Q3 managed to get a job. But 113,000 who were employed in Q3 lost their jobs in Q4. But the most important info that we need to be looking at is the quarterly labor force survey for Q1 of this year, which actually came out last week at the time of you watching this video. But I'm going to hold your hand when I say this, and that is that you've fallen victim to propaganda when it comes to the state of employment and unemployment for young people, because the reality is so much worse. In order to understand the context around the newest quarterly labor force survey report for Q1, we have to understand the definitions of three key metrics. First, we have the participation rate, which is based on how many of the entire age population is either employed or is unemployed but actively looking for a job, which means, they are participating in the labor force. Then we have the absorption rate, which is based on how many of the entire age population is actually currently employed. But the unemployment rate, which is seen as the holy grail of unemployment statistics, only looks at the youth that are unemployed but are still actively looking for a job. So what we should actually be looking at is not the unemployment rate, it's the absorption rate, if we really want to get a solid idea of how many young people are currently unemployed, regardless of whether they are looking for a job or not. Now, the reasons why you have been told to only focus on the unemployment rate is twofold. First, we have to realize that although the unemployment rate from ages 15 to 24 is bad, it's almost at 61%. Those not accounted for in the absorption rate and were not participating in the labor force was almost at 90%. That is so much worse. And then second, when we look at both the participation rate and the absorption rate, we start having questions pop up, like, why are so many young people not looking for a job? And second of all, what resources and systems have failed them? Now, the focus shifts from the individual back onto the government. But if we have to compare just the unemployment rate for Q4 of last year and Q1 that just passed, we start to realize that in almost every single age group, unemployment increased, with the exception of the age group 45 to 54. But you know what? We can take a step back and just focus on a subset of the youth that created their own businesses and found employment in their own capacity. Because ultimately, we always hear that small businesses are the backbone of the economy. But how true is that statement really? In an economy where so many young people are starting their own business, they do it because experience is the new degree. How do you apply for a job that needs experience if you don't have the experience? And so they also started to get a steady stream of income. But this poses a problem, because if every single Tom, Dick, and Harry starts a business, they're just starting a business for the sake of it. And the act of starting a business is no longer a matter of passion and creatively and innovatively meeting the needs of a specific consumer market, but rather to meet the financial needs of the business owner only. And even for businesses that do have a specific consumer base, their prices are way too expensive. Because they have to compete with major corporations that are able to manufacture and retail things in bulk, which smaller businesses don't have the luxury of doing. And so in the current economy, where people can't just spend left, right, and center, the small businesses suffer because nobody can afford to buy what they are selling. But all in all, yes, we can admit that small businesses are the backbone of the economy, but we also have to realize that not only do we need to start getting a truly open market where the government relaxes a lot of their restrictions, and then second, we start getting businesses that actually deliver creative and innovative products and services that help the economy to grow, that people depend on in their daily lives, which we currently don't have a lot of. But a lot of small businesses, the reality for them is that they don't start off with a lot of capital. And a lot of them need extra streams of income through marketing platforms such as social media. But the only stream of income that they can maybe get some income from is off of YouTube. But this time last year, the Minister of Digital Communications and Technology, Solly Malatsi, mentioned that he was willing to bring the TikTok Creator Fund to South Africa, and that still has not happened.
The Creator Rewards program is not available in Sub-Saharan Africa at the moment. It actually launched in 2023, so the program is still in iteration phase. It's still, we're still figuring out how it works. We're still trying to figure out the kinks. It's available in 7 markets across the globe. It's not available in Sub-Saharan Africa, and we don't yet know what the timelines are for it to be available in Sub-Saharan Africa.
They have the opportunity to make money strictly off of using platforms like TikTok. When it comes to platforms like YouTube, that is the only stream of income that a lot of content creators and a lot of small businesses can actually make money from through ad revenue. But the reality is that even if you're someone who feels like politics and economics doesn't affect you simply because you're a content creator, you have to rethink that. YouTube is owned by Google. And Google has AdSense, where companies market their products and services to certain regions around the world. Some regions like the US are very, very competitive. Almost every company is trying to tap into the US market. And so because it's more competitive, they bid higher for that ad space. But if we look at the state of South Africa and we are losing investment left, right, and center, not many companies are actually targeting South Africa. And if you've been wondering why your ads on YouTube have been questionable, that is the reason why. So obviously creators in the UK and the US get paid astronomically higher than any South African creator can, even if they have the same amount of views. But you know what? Despite Solly Malatsi and the Digital Communications and Technology Department, we can look at the Department of Education that also plays a role in all of this. They are currently functioning off of a cap system that is built for an economy that doesn't even exist anymore. And at the time in 2011 and 2012, when the cap system was first being phased in, back then it was a completely different world. People were getting bonuses, a suitable salary, benefits, pension, the whole 9 yards. That no longer exists anymore. Yet despite all these amazing advantages being taken away, a lot of learners in school, in both primary and secondary school, they are being taught how to be employable and how to work for somebody else. But they aren't ever taught really how to stand on their own 2 feet and to start a business themselves in such an oversaturated job market. Not only has experience become the new degree, but not everybody has the resources to get tertiary qualifications, to go to college, to go to university in order to enter the working world. And it's for these reasons that I founded the Youth Boost Initiative. The South African curriculum is not preparing students for what is coming next. As grade 7s get ready to go to high school, they are about to encounter a brand new environment for the first time in their adolescence. They have to start from the bottom. But while they are trying to navigate themselves and where they would like to be, they also have to form new social relationships and meet completely new academic standards, which can be overwhelming. Then we have the grade 9s. Grade 9s are expected to make subject choices that will not only dictate the rest of their high school journey, but also determine what they will actually be doing when they leave school one day. But what a lot of people don't know is that girls aged 15 to 17 and boys aged 18 to 20 go through a phase of socio-emotional development as part of their adolescence. Not only do the processes involved impact motivation, but also individual self-actualization as well. Now, this minor detail actually does pose major problems for subject choices, and is also the reason why a lot of people chop and change subjects in between grade 10 and grade 12. Then we have the matrics. Some are going overseas taking a gap year, others are going to study directly after school, and some are entering the workforce directly. But a lot of them are excited about this newfound freedom, but quickly realize that it's quite daunting. You go your whole life from one structured environment to the next, and you wake up one day and you realize you are now the one supposed to take action. Now, for those entering the working world, whether directly after school or upon graduating university, they quickly come to realize that experience is the new degree. And for much of the modern working world, experience is a prerequisite to even be considered throughout the application process. But if everybody needs experience, how is one to gain that experience in the first place? Many people decide, okay, entrepreneurship, why not? Until they hit a roadblock. Because there aren't any resources or guides in the South African landscape on how to actively and practically build, maintain, and grow a business from the ground up. And it is for these reasons that I founded the Youth Boost Initiative, South Africa's first ever life skills development initiative that actively addresses the challenges and obstacles of the inner, outer, and future worlds of grade 7s, 9s, and 12s. But the initiative doesn't replace life orientation. It rather builds on it and delivers real life skills that are needed in the modern world. It's easy to learn the theory, but ultimately, when applying it, that's the difficult part. It bridges the gap between traditional life skills development programs and the modern needs of a digitized economy. We are currently sitting with an oversaturated job market for the youth, and that is also paired by the rapid growth of AI, not only in hiring and training, but also within the everyday operations of organizations today. That is why it is so important to focus on the fact that a modern world requires modern solutions, and that starts with a modern perspective of life skills development. For the grade 7s, we have the pre-teen program. For the grade 9s, we have the teen program. And for the grade 12s, matrics, we have the young adults program. For our pre-teens, we have an engaging 8-week workshop. And for our teens and young adults, we have a 12-week workshop. With all three programs, the journey is both practical and fully online. Maybe you're a concerned parent who is just trying to find better solutions for your child. Or maybe you're a learner who's still in school, who is just trying to find the right resources to manage that next chapter. So if this sounds like you and you would like to learn more, you can scan this QR code on your screen, or you can access the initiative guide directly in my description below. But for now, I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.